On October 14th, Pittsburgh pro-life leader Herb Geraghty was indicted and charged with violation of the FACE Act in connection with the nonviolent pro-life direct action that occurred in 2020 in Washington, D.C. 2 years later, this is part of the aggressive campaign from the Biden administration's Department of Justice and Merrick Garland to target peaceful pro-life activists. So far, at least 22 anti-abortion activists, some at 87 years old, that have been charged with the FACE Act this year. This is also a little more shocking because no arrests or charges have been brought up against any individual who has firebombed, vandalized, or otherwise attacked pro-life churches and pregnancy centers just this summer. If convicted, Herb and his other defendants will face up to 11 years in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and a fine of $260,000. Herb is the latest. Came out today. We saw it in the news actually yesterday. He is with us today. I talked to Herb in 60 seconds. Now, if you're like me, you probably love dogs. Well, I'm not saying more than certain family members, but I'm not saying it either. You know what I'm saying? If your dog is eating dry kibble food, you need to understand that's dead food. It's not doing him any good, but filling his belly and keeping him alive. This is why Rough Greens is so incredible. I didn't know that. I didn't even pay attention. I mean, I got really good dry kibble food, like really expensive stuff. Apparently, not enough. Not enough. You need a supplement. This is not food. This is a supplement. It's called Rough Greens. It has vitamins, minerals, probiotics, antioxidants. You name it. If it's healthy for your dog, it's probably in Rough Greens. So get your free trial bag just to make sure your dog will eat it and like it. They'll send you a little bag for free. You just pay for shipping. And if your dog loves it, I'm telling you, you will see changes in your dog. Massive changes like I have seen in Uno. In the next couple of months. It's great stuff. Rough Greens, ruffgreens.com/Beck or call 833-GLEN-33. Ruffgreens.com/Beck. Welcome, Herb. How are you, sir?
Hi, I'm all right.
So thank you, first of all, for being on, and feel free if I kind of meander into any place that, could cause you any kind of legal trouble, just feel free to say, not going to go there. But I think we're okay. I know that you are, these guys are serious what they're doing, and I think it is an absolute outrage. But you can't tell us anything about what happened, but I understand you're ready. I mean, you're like, okay, I'll testify in court. You bet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously this is disturbing. I think anyone paying attention can recognize that, over a decade in prison for an alleged nonviolent offense is ridiculous. But I think that while it's happening, I'm going to use it as an opportunity to speak up for the unborn, because that's why I'm involved in this. And so I'm gonna do whatever I can to continue being an advocate for them.
So, we've had a couple of people, and I don't want to get into your case, but we've had a couple of people that they've had rifles and shotguns in their house, being pointed at them, and they've agreed to surrender. It's no big deal. Why do you think the FBI is using this force?
I think that what it looks like to me is that we know that the Biden administration has an extremist pro-abortion legislative and judicial agenda. And to me, it looks like they also have a prosecutorial pro-abortion agenda where all they feel they can do right now for the abortion industrial complex, which has funded their careers to this point, is hand over myself and my co-defendants and other pro-life leaders head on a platter. And so they're going to be as aggressive as they possibly can to to try to silence pro-life activists, to make us feel isolated and alone and targeted. But it's not going to work. We're going to continue to speak up for the unborn because, as much as it's disturbing what's happening to us, potential jail time, having guns pointed at some of our faces and at, our wives and children for some people, it's nothing compared to what the government allows to be done to the unborn every single day in this country. They are the real victims here.
You were a part of a story that happened a couple of years ago, I think, in Washington, D.C. It was you and your group that found all of those pulverized baby parts buried, right? Can you refresh my memory on this?
Yeah, so that was actually only just a few months ago.
It seems like every week a decade goes by. So
yeah. So in that case, two activists who I'm proud to work with, named Teresa Bukovac and Lauren Handy, while doing advocacy outside of Cesare Sant'Angelo's clinic in Washington, D.C., they were able to intercept a delivery. The clinic system for getting rid of what they would call medical waste was coming to collect the medical waste, and they intercepted that and were able to, to open the Cesare Sant'Angelo's clinic in Washington, D.C. They were able to intercept a delivery. The clinic system for getting rid of what they would call medical waste was coming to collect the medical waste, and they intercepted that and were able to, to open the box. And what they found inside was that, what the clinic calls medical waste was actually the bodies of 115 murdered unborn children, 5 of whom were clearly past the age of viability, meaning they could survive outside of the womb potentially. So what we're talking about in that case, all of them were murdered. Every single child killed in abortion, is a victim of injustice. But for a few of those children found, they're also potentially victims of crimes. It was illegal to kill children in the manner that he did at the age of development that they are, when again, they can survive outside the womb. And so that was just a really horrific discovery. And I think that the activists that were involved in actually finding the bodies are still reeling from that. I mean, they discovered the bodies of murder victims, and the D.C. government and the federal government thus far have not done any investigation.
That is insane.
That's
insane.
It's incredibly disturbing, but that is what the abortion industrial complex in this country is. That's what they do. They make their money by dismembering children and often coercing very poor, low-income, pregnant people and families into feeling as though the only option they have is to pay them thousands of dollars to kill their unborn children. It's a horrific industry, and they make millions and millions of dollars propping up this extreme injustice. And so whatever they do to me and the co-defendants in this case, it's nothing compared to what they're doing to these children, because 11 years in prison, horrifying. I'm hopeful that I'm not going to be indicted, and I'm confident that I will be vindicated of these charges. However, 11 years in prison is nothing compared to having your life snuffed out before you're even old enough to take your first steps or speak your first words.
Let me interrupt you here for a second, Herb. I just want to remind the audience. I don't know when it was, maybe sometime last week, could have been 2 years ago. I mentioned that this is why authoritarian governments have got to take out religious people, because they know why they do it. They know how important it is to them, and they're willing to pay the price. This is nothing that Herb, hasn't thought about, and you can hear it now.
Well, you mentioned religious people, but I'm not sure if you know, I'm actually an atheist. For me, this isn't about religion.
Good for you.
To me, solely a human rights issue. I'm against abortion for the same reasons that I'm against the death penalty and police brutality and murder of anyone, whether they're born or unborn. I believe in human rights for all human beings.
Good for you. Good for you. Where do you get is it just your love for humanity? Because sometimes, and this is not I should tell the audience this. I know this, and they might know it if they know the stories, but you are a progressive, which, the early 20th century progressives are very Malthusian. I mean, they were the ones with eugenics and everything else. Progressivism, the early stuff, and if it's still translated that way, is very anti-human.
Well, what I think is that my beliefs are simply that it's wrong to kill human beings.
Good.
I don't think that should be something that is partisan. And I think it's interesting.
That seems pretty obvious, doesn't it?
And so I don't think that this should be something that is a religious issue or a conservative or progressive issue. I think that everyone should be able to agree that human babies should not be killed for profit for $1 billion industry. Like, this is something that I really don't think needs to be a political issue, but unfortunately in this country it is.
So help me out on this. I went to my first abortion rally a couple of years ago with my kids, and there were two kinds of people. There were the kinds of people that were shouting and carrying signs of, bloody babies and everything. And then there were those that were quietly praying, helping, being kind to people that were going in, but trying to convince them not to go in. And to me, there was a winning tactic, and it wasn't the screaming and yelling. What is your tactic?
Well, so I think that people have different tactics, but what should always be at the center of your activism when you're at an abortion clinic is focusing first on the pregnant person and their needs, because at the end of the day, when abortion is legal, they do have a choice. And so when I am at an abortion clinic outside, the focus has to be on serving that person, because we know that the reason people are seeking abortions in this country is because most often they feel as though they cannot afford to have another child. And those are numbers from the abortion industry.
Correct.
They say that themselves. The Guttmacher Institute says, people are seeking abortion because they feel as though they have too many children. They don't have support from their partner or their parents or their community. And so I think the pro-life response to that needs to be, well, we're that community.
Right.
We will stand up and support you in whatever it takes to make it so that you feel empowered to choose life.
Right. I was at a pro-life women's center just the other day, and they don't care about the mom and the baby just to make sure that the baby stays alive. They've got a program that runs 2-3 years where they provide the clothing and they provide all kinds of aftercare for the mom and the child. And if we would just love one another, it would be so much easier, not care just about winning this one battle. It's a longer term idea.
Absolutely. And I think that the abortion industry is threatened by that. That's why after the Dobbs decision, we saw pro-life pregnancy centers, like you mentioned, as well as pro-life churches, be attacked. Some were firebombed, vandalized, and otherwise attacked by pro-abortion activists because they're threatened by the love that the pro-life movement has for pregnant women and young families and people who need help. That's why
Right.
We're here. We exist to help them. And so I think that there's a lot of different ways to be pro-life. You can be outside the clinics. You can work at a pregnancy center. You can work in Congress trying to protect them in the law and serve pregnant people that way. But I think that there's a lot of ways to do it. And as long as we are always being peaceful and nonviolent in our activism, we will win. And I'm confident we saw this major step towards justice in the Dobbs decision when Roe v. Wade was overturned. But of course, that's not the end of the story. There's still thousands of children being killed despite Dobbs every single day.
Herb, I've only got about a minute left, and I have to ask you, is this FBI indictment, is this going to cause you to reconsider your activism at all?
Oh, absolutely not. If anything, I am just more passionate about speaking up for victims of violence, again, in all circumstances, not just the unborn, but their parents and all people who are at risk of being killed or abused by state-sanctioned violence, whether it's in the form of abortion or the death penalty or police brutality or anything else. I care about human rights for all human beings, and I will not be silenced.
Yeah, good for you. And, Herb, politically, we're on a different side of the aisle, but I bet we would both be surprised how much we agree on. Anyone who has principles over politics, I can stand with. Thank you so much, Herb. Oh, by the way, you have a GoFundMe page, don't you? Because this is going to be very expensive.
Yeah, I have a Give, Send, Go.
A Give, Send, Go. What is it?
Will kick me off because I think they're pro-abortion. It's just givesendgo.com/Herb. Very easy. Okay.
And he's going to have to be traveling to Washington, D.C. for the trial, everything else. Last night, he had 2,305. That's not going to cut it. Go to givesendgo.com/Herb. This may be the thing that you can do today to stand up against this corruption. Givesendgo.com/Herb. Thanks, Herb.